So Skrillex has recently just released his new album. Most of the tracks in the album have been in the works from 2014, 2015, 2016. So what I wanted to do today was go over this track that I've made in the style of his new album. I want to go over some of the sound design techniques, some of the arrangement techniques. I'll give the track a play just to see what we're working with, and I'll break it down step by step. Basically, one of the first things that I want to break down or go over is the main sound design trick that I wanted to cover in this video. This sound design trick basically contributed to the main element of this track, and we'll have a listen to it soloed and then I'll go over how to do it. So essentially the track or the group that I wanted to break down was this one here. So yeah, this is a pretty similar sound to what I heard in a few of the Skrillex tracks on the album, a couple of them being the last drop in Spitfire and some of the drops in Mosquito Tui, I think is how you pronounce it. Essentially all it is just that 16th note LFO rhythm on a synthesizer or something of the kind. So essentially it's a pretty simple trick. All you really need is some form of sample. This can be a synthesizer, this can be a vocal chop, this can be whatever you want. The example that I'll use it on is this little vocal chop here that I've got. So pretty annoying, just a repetitive sort of vowel sound. And then essentially what you want to do is you want to load up something like LFO tool or any volume automation tool. Like Shaperbox is good, Kickstart is good. This is actually just a demo of LFO tool. I don't actually own the full thing. And basically what you want to do, you want to make this sort of plucky curve angled down like this, and then set the rate to 16th note, and then you can sort of adjust the smooth level. So obviously that's a very bare bone way to get the sounds. There's a lot of processing and whatnot that goes on behind the scenes and afterwards. This is actually another example of the same technique used on a different vocal chop. And this time we'll use it on this sort of power drill sounding synthesizer that I made in Serum. So this is before the LFO tool. And then I applied it and then bounced the result to audio, and this is what I got. And then in context of the song, it sounds like this. So yeah, there really isn't any rule on what sound you have to use this technique on. Pick any sound you like, slap an LFO tool on it, and then see what you get. So another thing that I want to talk about in this track is the Skrillex yoink. Essentially with this one and this song that I made, I cheated and I just got the sample from Splice. You can get a bunch of these different yoinks. I know that you can make them yourself in Serum, but they're pretty tricky to make, so essentially all I wanted to do was take one from Splice and resample it from there. The original sample that I got from Splice was this one, and it's a pretty cool sound. What happened was it didn't actually fit the key of my track, so I had to do a bit of readjusting and fine tuning. So essentially what I did was I pitched it down 4 so that I got this, and then I made a little rhythm out of it. And then that didn't quite fit with the track. I think there was some tonalities and stuff within the actual sample that wasn't quite aligning with the key of my song. So what I went ahead and did was I applied this Chroma, and since B flat was a pretty prominent note in the key of this track, I made Chroma make sure that this yoink was only playing a B flat or mostly playing a B flat so that it would fit in the key of my track. Chroma is an insane plugin. Basically you can put this on anything you like, and you can essentially choose these piano notes on this piano roll, and it will modulate the tonality or the key or the pitch to whichever note you want. So say if you want a chord, then you could select multiple of these notes and it would try and play that chord. Now it sounds like this. So yeah, Chroma is a great plugin for a lot of Skrillex sound design. I think in particular one of the tracks called Jungundra, I think the actual drop in that has a lot of these colorful glitchy elements that could be done by using Chroma, because Chroma pitch shifts samples and it has this sort of metallic-y sound about it that I'm noticing a lot of Skrillex songs. So another quick thing that I want to talk about with those yoinks is if you're not able to sound design them yourself in Serum or make them on your own in any way, what you can do is you can essentially take one of the samples that you've taken from Splice, that you've taken from a song, anything you want, and if you have the plugin Synplant too, then what you can do is you can drag in any sample you like. In particular, this yoink will be the sample that we'll be dragging in, and then you can drag it into this AI tool and it'll essentially try and replicate the sound. So if I drag in this sound and if I ask it to generate patches based on that sound, so essentially that's the technique that I use in this track. With this Synplant patch, I basically got these little bits, and essentially I just put it in the track near the end of some phrases, and this is what it sounds like. So yeah, it can come up with some pretty crazy stuff, really cool stuff as well. I actually got this from the same technique, another yoink that I placed in. I got this from a Synplant patch and I recorded it to audio and then resampled it a little bit, and this is what it sounds like. So yeah, this little sample actually reminded me quite a bit of the drop section in Recovery, which is one of the tracks on the album. It has that sort of like laser gun sound. Don't know how to describe it, but it's pretty crazy. And essentially what I did was I just layered that with a hi-hat, and then I got this. Another cool way that you can get these sorts of sounds is actually by loading a bunch of OTTs onto a single track in Ableton, or if you're not in Ableton and you're using FL Studio or anything, then you can download the OTT plugin from FUS. But essentially what you want to do is you want to take any sound you like, you can take any sample, and then what you can do, you can load a bunch of OTTs onto it, duplicate them until your laptop almost explodes, and it should give you some weird sounds that you can use as a yoink or a cool little fill in your track. So essentially I'll load in one OTT and then duplicate it, and then essentially if you freeze that track, if you flatten it, basically I've tried this technique before with some different samples and I essentially got this. Yeah, I'll talk about the drums to finish off. Essentially this is just a regular dubstep groove that I've got. So essentially what it is this hi-hat pattern going on in the background. It also has some toms going on and some little bongo percussion. This is the main snare that I've got. I've got this pretty punchy kick that I've used a little radiator on. I got some hats, and then what I've done is I've actually layered the snare with this little tonal layer that I got from this little light percussion pack. Essentially what I did was I took this percussion by itself, and then what I did was I boosted a tonal frequency up at 774 Hertz, and then added a couple of vocoders on it, as well as some saturation and some reverb, and then I get this little tonal layer for the snare that sounds like this. And then together alongside the snare, this is what it sounds like. So I've noticed this is a pretty common technique that Skrillex uses in his tracks, as he likes to add like a little tonal layer. Maybe it's some like glass shattering or something. But essentially the main thing is you want to layer your snares with some form of pitched layer so that it's not just a snare by itself. It makes it a little bit more interesting. So yeah, that's what I did here, and the whole drum beat together sounds like this. And one last thing to finish off is quickly this vocal sample that I got from Splice. I thought this was pretty Skrillex-esque. There's just some punchy vowel sounds from a female vocalist, and essentially what I've done is, since it wasn't in the key of my track originally, I pitched it up a little bit. So this is the original sample. So yeah, I made it +7 semitones on this Pro setting, dropped down the formants to about 60, and I resampled a bit in the main section, so this is what it sounds like. So yeah, nice little layer in there to finish things off. So yeah, the bass is pretty simple in this. All it is just a standard 808, and here's the MIDI for it. So yeah, pretty simple stuff, but altogether it sounds like this. So yeah, Skrillex, as we all know him, is basically the biggest pioneer in all of electronic music. I find it really impressive that most of the songs that he's put on his recent album aren't actually any of his new stuff, and they're mostly from the 2010s. So I hope that the breakdown of this track has sort of helped you see an insight to how Skrillex has made a lot of his songs in the past, as well as mostly on the new album. And yeah, I'll be putting this entire project on my Patreon, so if you want to get it for yourself, or if you want the stems, it'll all be over there, so make sure to go check it out. And yeah, I will see you all in the next video.